All right, welcome into another episode of Unbearable podcast. I'm Ryan Voss. With me, as always, is Drew Testa. Drew, how you doing?
Pretty good. I know we didn't make a lot of videos throughout this season, but like we talked about in the last episode, there really just wasn't a whole much to talk about, especially with Fields not really playing the back end of the season. So this will probably be the most exciting time of the year for us Bears fans, honestly.
You know what? I feel like I could be a fan again. I really just kind of mailed it in after the season. After we saw that Matt Nagy was going to be still uncompetent, not having offense, even with Justin Fields, I was like, all right, this season's over. And I knew that by the Browns games, and that was like week 3 or 4. So um, I don't really think we should talk about Matt Nagy too much.
No,
Um,
we know what he is and what he did. So I
yeah,
mean,
I'm
it's
not.
just beating a dead horse at this point.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that he's fired. The one that I'm maybe a little bit more surprising is Ryan Pace. I think there's an argument there that he could have been retained, but also at the same time there's an argument he could be fired. I wouldn't have been mad if he stayed. I'm not mad that he is fired. I'm kind of back and forth on this. What's your opinion?
I mean, yeah, like it definitely is different from Nagy, like you said, because Nagy was basically like a foregone conclusion. This one, there was like some rumors, but we didn't like know for sure. And then when it actually came out, I was actually pretty surprised because I thought they would give him another year since he didn't have a pick this first round pick this year anyway. I figured, well, even if he came for no year, no harm, no foul, he can't mess up a first round pick. He's usually good at drafting in the late rounds anyway, so we'll give him one more chance. But I guess they just decided that it was his time to go. So the GM search is always like a little bit weird to me because those aren't like names that you like people a lot of people like know like GM candidates, but it's probably like one of the most important positions. So I'm gonna have to start looking into some of the top candidates and stuff here to see who we pick up.
Yeah, like you said at the top of the podcast, you finally be a Bears fan again. This is probably like the most exciting time for us. For me personally, I said the same thing. Like I could be a Bears fan again. There's some Bears accounts that I don't always follow because they kind of annoy me. But I've tapped back into them and I'm seeing what they're saying, what they're writing, what they're hearing. So like it's actually I feel like the season really started yesterday because
Yeah.
this is more fun. With Pace, what I keep going back and forth with is like if you look at last year's draft class, Justin Fields, he's going to be the quarterback of the future. He got Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins, which both should project as our tackles starting next season. He got Khalil Herbert, who's a solid number 2 running back. Maybe one day takes over the majority of the share load there, depending what happens with the David Montgomery situation. You got Thomas Graham, who should compete at cornerback. Daz Newsome should probably have a spot or compete in training camp at wide receiver. Like every single one of his picks, he knocked it out of the park. Like he got with what he got a great draft with only like 5 picks. Also, too, with the new GM search, people are saying this is a really attractive job. The reason being it's a really attractive job is because of Justin Fields and Ryan Pace is the GM that was aggressive enough and smart enough to make the move to go get Justin Fields. And there's a good young core there in Roquan Smith and Jalen Johnson. I'd even throw Cole Kmet in there and like it's tough for me. Like I go back and forth on this. Yes, he made stupid decisions like Mike Glennon, even paying Andy Dalton. You can even get at him a little bit for the Mitch Trubisky draft pick, but also at the same time, he's every one of those mistakes that he's so bad. He's also made such a great one, like the Akeem Hicks signing. I'd even call Robert Quinn. You have to, given the fact that he has the most sacks in a single season by any Bears player ever. Even other like decisions he decided to do, like letting Cameron Meredith walk. That guy did not have a career after we didn't resign him, and people were so mad about that. There's a couple other like instances where like Pace I thought was a great GM, and with us firing both our head coach and our GM, there's leaves a lot of uncertainty on the table. At least if we kept the GM, we kind of knew what we had there, and what we had there was fine. Now, I mean, this is an extremely important time because this could go a variety of directions. We're not only trying to hire a coach, we're also trying to hire a GM. And like you said, GMs are a little lesser known. I got a couple we could talk about, but I just want to know your thoughts on that first.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up pretty good. He has made mistakes, but like no one's perfect. Everyone, even the Bill Belichick, has made mistakes. Everyone's makes mistakes, but I think at the end of the day, why they fired him, or maybe not exactly the main reason, but definitely a big part, at least in my opinion, is I think they're just gonna tie his legacy so much with Nagy that if they would have kept him and fired Nagy, people would have been like, how are we supposed to trust this guy? He hired Nagy and this and that. And I just don't think they wanted to deal with that. I think they just wanted to start a clean slate, fresh quarterback, fresh coach, fresh GM, and see if these guys could figure it out because the last couple guys didn't. That's just my opinion.
Are you able to see my screen?
Are you sharing something right now?
I will do that. It's been so long since I did this. I forgot how to do it. Oh, it's the big green button. Okay. So let's start first with the GM discussions because that's something we have been talking about. This guy here, Ari Mirov, I don't follow him, but I hear about him. He's pretty good, but he compiled a list of all the GM candidates right here. So for GM, they have Ed Dodds, who he works for the Colts and was a GM during the Seahawks like glory days. Morocco Brown, he's also a GM with the Colts, or sorry, a scouting assistant kind of guy with the Colts. This guy, I cannot say his name, I'm sorry, but he's with the Browns, and I believe this guy's with the Browns also. If you try to search these guys, there's not typically a Wikipedia page for them. The other two names I heard was Jeff Ireland with the Saints and Rick Smith, who Rick Smith used to be. Let me make sure that first name's right. Used to be with the Texans, which he was with the Texans and the GM when they drafted DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt.
Well, here's the thing with GMs though that we don't know is like, yeah, you could say that these guys were with this team when they picked these guys or this and that, but we don't know like what's going on in these rooms and these meetings when these teams are discussing their picks. Like we don't know if these guys are the main contributors or if these guys just had titles. Maybe they might not have had a big voice, but that's just something like the casual fan doesn't know. We don't know who the smart guys in the room are. You just have to assume that you hire one of them.
You're right. I will say though, with these four guys, the Colts have had great drafts in the last year. The Browns draft this past year was fantastic. And then the Rick Smith guy, he was actually the general manager. So I would like to get him. The reason why he's no longer the general manager is because his wife got diagnosed with cancer. And then I think the team sold, like he needed to step away from football. So if he's willing to return, that's a guy I'd like because he was the GM. He like had great success. I mean, if you drafted Deshaun Watson before everything that happened, J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins, like that's fantastic. But at least with the three teams the GMs are looking at are the Colts, the Browns, and the Saints. And those teams are teams that draft well. So they're looking in the right places. Like you said, we don't know if these are the guys actually making the decisions. We don't know, exactly who they are. But I mean, I feel like they're looking in the right places.
Right.
So that's all
what we asked for. Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that, really. But my top candidate choice would be Rick Smith. This is a guy willing to return back as GM because he was a GM before and he had great success. Personal matters. All right.
An interesting thought too is, and this is obviously all just rumors right now because we don't know what's going to happen. But let's just say Jim Harbaugh is the guy they want to bring in. Like that's their guy. That's their top option. That's who they want. We all know he likes to kind of build his own team the way he likes and build his own culture. So that could be another reason why they let Pace go, is not saying they would make Harbaugh a GM, but give him more control over a roster than a regular coach would have, if that makes sense. And then it wants someone like Pace and him up, colliding heads.
That's an interesting thing you bring up. So with Jim Harbaugh, when he left the 49ers, it's exactly why you said there was a rift with the GM. That's the same thing with another head coaching option, Brian Flores. Those are my top two. The reason being is because those guys are experienced coaches. Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he went to the Super Bowl in his second year, and in San Francisco, he left because he had a falling out with the GM. He went to Michigan, and as we all know, they were just in the playoffs. Brian Flores, he took over as the Dolphins coach. I think they went like 6-10, but everyone knew that.
And that's when everyone thought they were going to be terrible that year. Yeah.
Everyone, and they actually won some games they weren't supposed to win.
Right.
And then he had, I think, a good last two seasons. I mean, this season, everyone knows they started off 1-7 and they went 8-1 or something like that. Like, I think they were 10-6 or something last year. Like,
last year. Yeah, okay.
They're a good team. Like, I would love Brian Flores. The problem is he and the GM had some falling out. He wants a lot of control. So maybe it's not bad for them to get an inexperienced GM, pair him with an experienced coach, and that GM won't be so upset that he doesn't have all of the power. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and it will be less of a responsibility while he learns the team and everything, which could also help.
So those are my top two options because I think with the current state of the Bears, you need a guy that knows what he's doing. It's the utmost important. You can't get a guy in here like Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy made a lot of rookie mistakes as a head coach. He had a hard time like developing his own culture. No, actually, the culture was pretty good, but I don't know, he just had a hard time finding an identity offensively.
He never lit anyone up. He never yelled at any players. He never tried to fire anyone up. He was just kind of like a doormat. It kind of felt like a lot of
that. I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he was just a nice guy. I would like someone like Brian Flores or Jim Harbaugh, who have been a head coach before, have had success, could come in right away and come in with confidence and conviction. The other experienced coaches that their Bears are meeting with are Doug Peterson, which I'm not completely high on. I mean, he did have one great season with Eagles, but I feel like he's too similar to Matt Nagy coming from the Andy Reid tree. And then the other one's Dan Quinn, who I would take Dan Quinn over Doug Peterson personally. I think he had a little bit more success, and he's been so great with defense. I mean, Cowboys had a terrible defense. Now this year they were one of the top ones. So what do you think about those two guys?
I would personally rather have Brian Leftwich over either of those two guys.
Okay, so now you're going to coordinators. So
yeah, well, it's hard because I want to sit here and say, oh, we don't need to bring in a first-time coach because of what happened to Nagy. But the coach before Nagy was John Fox. That did not work out any better, and he was an experienced coach. So, right. I mean, it really is just kind of taking a shot in the dark here. I would lean Leftwich over those guys because, the upside, like we've seen Dan Quinn and Doug Peterson be coaches before. We kind of know what they are. Leftwich has upside. And we've never really seen, at least not that I could think of, unless maybe I'm just mistaking someone. I've never heard of the Bruce Arians coach tree. You know, he could maybe be in the first guy, and we could try to see how maybe Bruce Arians is like the prodigy to teach the next group of new coaches, you know, and we can get the first guy.
That's an interesting point.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you no more. You got to lean up. You're like too far away from my microphone.
I think
I still can't. I can't hear you, dude.
Can you hear me now?
No, not really.
Oh, this is bad.
Okay, no. Okay, you're good.
All right, sorry. All right, so I can't really think of any coordinators that are Bruce Arians, like you said. The thing about Brian Leftwich that I like is he had a 5,000-yard season. I got a 5,000-yard season on Jameis Winston. And I don't know if Jameis Winston has as much talent as Justin Fields is. You can't really judge him. I mean, actually you could, because Tom Brady has gone down to Tampa and still having career years. I mean, I know Tom Brady's Tom Brady, but the fact, I don't know, you can't really judge him up
and
there.
I think the Leftwich hire would be a lot different from hiring Nagy, because Leftwich was someone who played in the NFL for a long time. So it's not like he has no idea how to talk to football players or nothing like that. Like, he's someone who's been in the NFL, and you know, he knows what it's like to be around those guys.
All right, you're really actually starting to sell me on Leftwich. I'm kind of getting hyped about that hire. Any other of the coordinators that they're talking to? I know there's Nathaniel.
And I know we interviewed the Bills guy, but I mean, that just seems like kind of like a courtesy, like a check-in. I couldn't honestly see them hiring him, to be honest. And I know we interviewed Flores earlier today, but I mean, beside that, unless there's someone that they want that's just like under the radar that we don't know about, I can't really think of anyone. I think there's prime candidates, and I would like to hire a GM before we hired a coach personally. That's just my opinion, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen based off like what they're doing. So I'm just interested to see how it all plays out, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me to hire a coach before a GM personally.
So from what I understand about this interview process is that the Bears are just like casting a wide net. They're doing everyone. They're doing Zoom meetings. So they're kind of like doing guys, if they get a bad impression, don't like they say, they cross them off the list. And if they like the guys, they advance them to the next round. So this is a process that I think they're going to take slowly and diligently. I mean, it doesn't seem like any teams are really moving fast on a guy. I think that all teams are kind of just doing interviews, taking this slowly.
Well, I think it's going to be, everyone's going to kind of be a little stagnant until Harbaugh says what he wants to do, because he's going to have a lot of intrigue, obviously.
That and the playoff until the playoffs are over.
Right.
We don't really know what coach, because some of these guys you can't even hire until playoffs are over.
Yeah.
So this is something that's going to take a couple weeks, and then they're going to play out. But I mean, I'm encouraged actually by the start. I think they're interviewing some interesting people. I'm more worried about the coach than I am the GM, to be honest.
Oof, that's a tough one. I don't know. It's hard because you're bringing in two people who presumably have never met before and trying to tell them here work together. That's the only thing that really kind of sucks about firing both at the same time, you know?
That's what I'm saying. I kind of rather have stayed with Pace, but we'll see how it plays out. Popular Bears rumor, Tomlin or Peyton. I don't really know why that's a rumor. I don't know how that happens. If it does, absolutely go hire those guys. But I don't think that's actually real.
I think we would have to trade for Sean Payton.
Which I would trade for him, whatever it takes. Honestly,
Whatever it takes.
whatever it takes. Takes 2 first rounders. I say why not? I think Sean Payton would have more of an effect on this team than Khalil Mack, and we traded 2 first rounders for Khalil Mack. So
Okay, yeah, you can make that. I think you can make that argument potentially. Yeah.
any other comments or talking points?
I want to do like another episode sometime soon, maybe after the playoffs, like a roster analysis and like a free agency analysis. So
Okay.
let's do something like that. But like in terms of like the head coach and GM search, I mean, all we can really do is sit back and hope they hire people that are good. I mean, we can sit here and talk about it all day, but we're not going to get the jobs. So we just got to hope they make the right decisions. And over the last few years, they really haven't been able to do that at all, really, especially with head coach. But if you turn over a new leaf now, you got the quarterback, you got a decent defense. So now is as good a time as any to figure it out.
So this is kind of interesting. When I really like go full in, like became a Bears fan and like a diehard, it was in 2015. And I believe it was already after Ryan Pace and John Fox were hired. Or it was about that time. So this was the time I became a Bears fan hardcore 7 years ago. And it would be interesting to go back and look at their process, how they did it then. Like, I don't know if they brought in advisors like how they have Bill Polian right now, but I'm interested to see what they do differently now than what they did in 2015 when they brought in a new head coach and a new GM. Because like you said, we could just be going back down the same road we had unless they really switch things up this time around. So,
yeah. And I think a big problem is, honestly, you got the guy who's you're supposed to trust now because there's no GM and there's no coach. So like the face of the figurehead in terms of like media, like the team getting information to the fans, is pretty much Ted Phillips and the McCaskies. I mean, you got the George McCaskey saying, "Oh, I don't know anything about football. I'm just a fan like you guys." It doesn't really bode a whole lot of confidence that you're going to pick the right guys, you know?
you know, the good silver lining in that is at least even though they seem incompetent, Bears is still an attractive job. That's not scaring people
Yeah,
off. They
yeah.
still want to come to Chicago. It's a big city, historic franchise.
And I know like a lot of people might feel pressure because of like the brutal agony I guess Matt Nagy had to go through this year. But 2 years ago, we were talking about Matt Nagy like he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. So if you come here and you win, the people will love you. You don't get bashed for no reason.
Very true. Very good point. All right, so I guess really right now we just gotta wait and see who the Bears get, and when they do, we definitely will be back on this other practice. Even if it's the GM, try to do homework, learn about the guy, see
Yeah.
as much as we can. But until then, you guys take it easy.